Hello and welcome, fellow bookworms and film fans. This week's episode, we will be looking at the fantastic, heart-wrenching novel that is The Book Thief by, and I think I might say his name wrong, but it's Marcus Zusask or Zusa. I'm not sure. So I do apologise if I've said that name horrifically wrong. Now, this book was published in 2005 and the film was released in 2013. Now, as usual, I will be scaling the adaptation on 5 major things. So I'll be scaling it obviously on character representation, setting, the plot, is the film good in its own right, and obviously overall how everything fits in, how well the film did take from the book. Now, as I do say, there will be spoilers within this episode as I will be discussing the film and the book in its entirety. So if you have not seen it and you would like to, do read the book or watch the film first and then come back and have a look at this episode. Now, we will start with character representation. Now, we will focus on 5 of the main characters in this section because, as I say, nearly every single episode, there are simply too many to do each one individually. So we've got Death, we've got Liesel, we've got Hans, who's also known as Papa, we've got Rosa, who's also known as Mama, we've got Rudy, and we've got Max. Now we'll start with Death. Now Death is a character. He is the one that narrates both the book and the film. He's very wistful, caring, he's intrigued by the humans, and he's the one that's actually telling Liesel's story through what she wrote down towards the end of the book. So that's how he's able to have all these details with him. He is obsessed with colours. Now you see it in the book. You hear it in the book. Every time he sort of mentions a specific colour as something is happening. But you don't really see it in the film. You hear obviously him as a narrator. You don't really see him that much as a character. It's so apart from that, I mean, it is pretty much the same in the film. He's the narrator. He's the one that's sort of there. I do apologise. So he's the one that's there. He's the one that's telling Liesel's story. Then you've got Liesel. Now she is stubborn. She is strong-minded. She lost her brother on the way to Rosa and Hans. So she is she's plagued by nightmares. She's lost her mum because her mum's dropped her off in the foster care. Her brother's passed away and she's plagued by nightmares. She's slowly brought out of it by Hans and a little bit by Rosa. But she's also, she loves books, but she's very slow to learn. So she doesn't really know how to read. And she learns how to read with Hans, or Hans. I'm going to keep saying Hans. She's very passionate about her friends and very loyal to a fault. And you do see that a lot in both the film and the book. You don't get as much in the film about how much she loves books. There's a whole sequence in the book itself where she keeps sneaking into the mayor's wife's library, but you don't really see it as much in the film. It's sort of like an afterthought, really. But apart from that, it's pretty much the same. She's shown as stubborn, loyal, strong-minded, and very wary as well. Of everything that's going on, but she warms up to everybody, especially Rudy, who she has a bit of a thing for, I think, towards the end. Now you've got Hans, Papa. Now, he is strong, he's silent, he's caring, he stands up for Jews. Now, the only reason why I say that is because obviously this book is set during Nazi Germany, so this is a very key point of his character because during Nazi Germany he actually openly helps Jews in both the book and the film. He doesn't follow the Nazi party. He tried to get in once and then decided that it wasn't worth it. He plays the accordion. That's a big thing. That's a massive thing. It's the whole reason why we end up with Max on his doorstep. And he always bickers with Rosa, but he loves her, every part of her, and would not have it any other way. And you see this. You see that how much he loves her. And it is brilliantly shown on the screen. I think his representation is spot on. You really do feel that he is this strong, silent, caring person that brings Liesel out of her shell, that looks after Rosa, that does best by human beings. And then you've got Rosa, who is also known as Mama. She's got a quick tongue. She's very tough exterior. but she loves with all her heart. And at the beginning, you don't really see that, but as it progresses and as you see more of her character, you do get this feeling that she is loved and she loves deeply and she loves Liesel. And a scene as well when she comes to the school to tell Liesel off, and it's to tell her that Max has woke up because she knows how worried Liesel's been, and it's like that's kindness. That's what she's about basically. Um, she's a very strong woman. She does bicker with Hans, but will do absolutely anything for him. Will follow him through fire. She takes absolutely no nonsense. And all of this they do show in the film. Now, the Thor that Liesel sees take longer in the book, but obviously the film is will always be a bit of a quicker pace than the book. So that's why it's a little bit quicker in the film. You see this Thor, whereas in the book it takes her a while to realize that Rosa is actually quite a caring woman. They come across Rudy. Rudy is Liesel's best friend and love interest. I say love interest, I mean, towards the end she realizes that she actually deeply did care for him, but it starts off with him racing her for a kiss, which she never gives him, and he keeps asking for a kiss constantly throughout the book, a couple of times throughout the film, and she still doesn't give it to him up until the last scene, and then she kisses him. In the book he's dead already. In the film she kisses him just after he dies, and it is, oh my god, it brings a tear to one's eye if you've got a heart. Now he admires Liesel. He is obsessed with Jesse Owens. In one point he paints himself black and pretends to be Jesse Owens, which, as we know, Nazi Germans not a fan of any other race apart from the pure white Aryan race. He faces a lot of shtick for that. He stands up for his friends. He's a very big-hearted boy, and he's not one to follow the crowd. So if somebody is bullying somebody and it's not right, he will step up for them, even if it means that he's going to endure something because of that. So he steps up for his friend Tommy, and because of that, he ends up having to run laps nearly every single time when he goes to the Hitler Youth. And you see they do this very well on screen. You get this really nice feeling that he's just a genuinely lovely little boy that will grow into a fantastic man if he grows older. Yeah, I don't want to talk about it, not yet. Then you get Max. Now Max is a Jew. He is very beaten down. He's desperate. He's very close to death, and he's always terrified for his life. But he's terrified for what he's putting people through as well. He sparks Liesel's desire to write, and he pushes her to become a narrator, not just a reader. He's so beautifully portrayed in the film. I love the way that they portrayed him. You see this desperation, you see this fact that he's right on the edge, and you still feel like he wants to live though. He's got this desperation, but he wants to live, and he feels guilty for wanting to live because one of the scenes is that he gets told that only one person can go with this guy to be saved on Crystal Night, and he goes and leaves his family behind. In the film, it's his whole family. In the book, it's just his mum. But he goes because he wants to live, and he feels bad that he wants to live. Now, in the book, he does end up in one of the worker camps, but it does end with him being freed and coming back and saying hi to Liesel again, which I think is absolutely emotional. It really is. It is so fantastically done. Now, you do come across other players in this script, as it were. Now you come across the mayor's wife. She plays a much bigger role in the book than she does in the film, and I feel like she's sort of underdone in the film, and I feel sorry for her because in the book she is such a key part of who Liesel becomes. But for the overall representation of those they have portrayed, it really made me feel the characters had come to life. And so apart from the fact that they didn't really portray the mayor as the mayor's wife as well as they should have done, I'm going to give them a 10 out of 10. 9 out of 10, sorry. I'm giving them a 9 out of 10 for character representation. Now, the setting of the book is primarily a street in Germany. It's a little German town set just before and during and a little after World War II. Now, for this, the director has remained completely faithful. He's got the just before they go to war, he's got the when they go to war, and he's got the after they've got beat as well. And so for that, I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. And that one is a 10 out of 10. Now, with every adaptation I've reviewed so far, The little things seem to be lost to the film narrative. And although this film is lovely and it's beautifully done, this one is no different to all the others. Now, the similarities are that it starts with Death saying how he came across the book thief 3 times in life and how he reads the story over and over through the years. And this is how we're finding out her story. The first encounter is when she's 9. She and her brother are going to a foster family. Her brother doesn't make it. As I said before, he passes away on the train, unfortunately. And then she meets her best friend Rudy. Germany goes to war. She steals a second book from a book burning on Hitler's birthday. I mean, how bold can you be? Because if they're burning books on Hitler's birthday, it's books the Nazis do not want you to read. So for her to steal that second book then, it tells us she doesn't really care. You see Max past as well, and how he escaped his situation to end up with the Hobermans. I'm sorry, again, if I mispronounce. I'm not very good at pronouncing certain words. And you see the deteriorating Germany, and you see this through the fact that Liesel's mum, Rosa, has to make ends meet. She loses a lot of her cleaning business, which I will touch upon later. And the fact that everybody's sort of got to make sure that their ends meet. And if you've got a bigger family, there's not much you can do. I mean, I'm from a family of, I've got 8, there's 8 of us. So during that time, it would have been nearly impossible to feed us all on the rations that you were given. And she has to feed, Rosa has to feed Liesel, but also Max, who isn't even technically there because he's a Jew and he shouldn't have been there. So it makes it a lot harder, and you see this deteriorating Germany. You've got the air raids that are getting closer to Himmel Street. You also see the human side of the people living at Himmel Street, but both the unwillingness to see or understand what it is that Hitler is actually doing, because it's also the very core belief that everyone deserves to be treated as human for some of the other residents, but some of them aren't bothered. So a lot of the core beliefs of some of the residents, like the Hobermans, is that everyone needs to be treated like humans. And it's also the case of the Steiners, who is Rudy's family. They believe that everyone should be treated like humans. But you get other people that don't quite have this core belief. They believe in what Nazi Germany is. So you do see Crystal Night, which is, well, it's awful. It's absolutely awful what happened on that night. I'm not going to go any further than that. It is horrendous. You see that in both narratives, and it is as awful to read as it is to watch. You also see the walking of the Jews through the town. Now, in the film, you only see it once, but in the book, it is seen many times. In both, you see Max leave as a way to save the Halbermans. And in the film, he remains free, but in the book, as I mentioned before, he's caught. But he is again released because when Germany loses, he's released from the camp, and he has his reunion with Liesel after the war is over. Now, both Hans and Rudy's fathers end up going into war, but more of a punishment than because they are needed. Now, that's slightly different because Hans gets injured and sent back to Rudy's, but Rudy's dad comes home after the entire street is blown up in an air raid, which is kept pretty much the same. But in the film, Rudy's dad goes off because he's needed, and Hans goes off because of a punishment for being a decent human being. Now, the way that the characters grow and love and the interactions that they've got is exactly the same, and it's beautifully portrayed. And the end of the film is almost exactly the end of the book. Now we catch up with Liesel years later, when she's old, and Death greets her. And in the book, it has a little conversation between Death and Liesel. In the film, it is just sort of like he says, Death is omnipotent. It can be a he, a she, who knows. Greets Liesel and says that that he's been reading her book. Now the differences, there are quite a few, so I will try and pick out some of the more glaring ones. You don't see the washing business. Now, I only mention this because, as I said, in the deteriorating Germany, and this washing business is how Rudy and Liesel become closer friends as well. it shows their blossoming relationship, as well as the decline of Germany. Now, we're not shown the other children of Hans and Rosa, which seems like an oversight, as you do get a bit of the background. You've got the son that believes that Hans should have joined the Nazi party, and believes in Germany and what they're doing, and believes in Hitler. And then you've got the daughter that's with a rich family, and isn't really that bothered as much about the way that Hitler's going, so long as she's still got a job, basically. You get Max, who is a Jew on the run, joins them so much quicker in the film, like so much quicker. I had to like double check my information with the book, because I was like, I swear it's a little bit later, but it is. He does join them a lot quicker. And in the film, he paints a book, which he paints Mein Kampf, to give to Liesel to write her story. However, in the book, he writes several stories in Mein Kampf, and the blank book is actually given to her by the mayor's wife, so she can write her story. Now, the film misses out a lot of summers where she steals with Rudy to get through, and also she ends up reading in the mayor's house because of the wife. However, it is after the mayor finds out in the film, he kicks Liesel out. In the book, it's when they say that they can no longer keep Rosa employed that Liesel calls her a coward, shouts in her face, and decides not to come back. Then she sneaks in through the window and steals a couple more books from the mayor's wife, and will sit and read. And in fact, at one point, the mayor's wife leaves out cookies for her, and leaves a note saying, "You're more than welcome to come in at any time you like. This is your library as much as mine." So that is missing. The mayor's wife does seem more sure of herself and is less done in the film as she is in the book. So let's have a look. Yeah, so obviously I've said all about like the mayor's wife being more of a character in the book than she is in the film. I appreciate the way the mayor's wife does grow in the book, and a little dissatisfied with how she doesn't in the film. Now I could go on forever about the differences in the books, but another key one is the bombings. So in the book, the accordion is played once, and then Liesel is reading one of the books that she stole. I think it's called The Whistler in the book, and she's reading it quietly to herself to kind of calm herself down, and then suddenly everyone starts listening to her. And so every single time they go into an air raid shelter, people want her to read. Now, she also has a neighbour who's in some sort of like row with Rosa, and in the book she comes over and she's like, "I will stop being in a row with you. I'll give you coffee if Liesel can come over and read." You also get this little subplot with this side character, who one of her sons come back from war, the other one doesn't, and she sort of breaks down and stops wanting to live. And then you see the son that came back kill himself because he feels guilty for wanting to live. And I feel like this is missed in the film. The whole sort of like, in the film you see the accordion being played and everyone banding together like that, but you miss this little subplot. And that's a big part for me, because it showed sort of like the human side of people, and it showed the effect that the war was having on not such a grand scale, but on those that came back, on those that survived. They felt like they didn't deserve to survive. And so I feel like the film could have brought a little bit of that into the narrative, sorry. Now, another one as well is, as I said before, Liesel's writing. Now, she steals a lot more books in the book, than she does in the film. In the film, I think she steals 2. In the book, she steals quite a few. She racks up the thievery, really. And so she writes the book on a blank book that the mayor's wife left on a windowsill for her. And by doing this, she's in the basement when the final scene happens. Now, the final scene in the book and the film are just as good as each other. And I'm not going to lie, I cried at the film and I cried at the book, because the way it's described is it's not described as explosions. It's described as what the characters were in their state when they passed. So Rosa was mid snore, you know, Hans greeted death. They were all quite paper thin. Rudy was dreaming of being Jesse Owens, and it's all these little bits, and it's when they hear like this knocking, and in the book and the film, and they find Liesel alive, and they dig her out, and she's running down the street because she doesn't understand what's happened. And when she finds Rudy and she kisses him, and she's just, you know, she's like, you know, she doesn't say I love you, but do you know what I mean? She means it. A kid at that age will love unconditionally. And it breaks your heart. It really does. It is such a heart-wrenching bit because everybody she loved, everybody is dead. And in both narratives, you get Rudy's dad coming home from war. Now, as I said before, in the book, it's a punishment because he doesn't want Rudy to go off to this Hitler Youth Training Academy to then be sent off to war. In the film, he goes because he's enlisted. Now, when he comes back in the book, he obviously is heartbroken because if he'd have sent Rudy off, Rudy would have survived. So again, it's that survivor's guilt that's playing a major part throughout the book. And then you see the mayor's wife and the mayor because they come down. And the mayor's wife goes, I hear a daughter, you know, a girl survived, sees Liesel and looks after her. And Rudy's dad looks after her. And it's sort of like what's left of this little community band together because everybody else is dead and gone. And you see this perfectly portrayed in film as it is on book. You see that final scene, as well, where when Max comes into the shop and Liesel sees him and realizes that he survived. Now, in the book, it's a lot more sort of like, yes, he made it, because we saw him in a workers' camp. None of us are stupid. We've all studied World War II at school. We know what workers' camps would have done. They would have starved them. They would have died. And the fact that this character that we rooted for so much survives and manages to go back and say hi to Liesel and let her know that he is able to get on with his life is beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. And I feel like the main parts of the film do capture the main parts of the book. They miss, as I said, most of the summer. They miss most of the thieving. They miss sort of like the washing business. But the parts that they do get are fantastically done. So I loved both. I loved both adaptations. But as far as the plot goes, it was missing and was changed quite a lot in regards to like the littler bits, like the whole of the summer, you know, the bombing scenario, the fact that Max joined them so much quicker. And so for this, I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10. I know it seems like I'm just sitting on the fence when I give it a 5 out of 10, but it is seriously considered. Now, the film in its own right is a lovely film. It is lovingly done. It shows the turmoil and the effect of the Nazi Party in such a small street. The fact that you've still got these people that basically want to be human beings, but they're being told that you have to hate all these other races. So when you're being told that, and when you've got like the SS and you've got spies, and you don't know if your neighbour can be trusted or not, you go along with it. And then because your neighbour's going along with it, you go along with it, and so on and so forth. So it does encapture loads of that. You know, it looks at the ordinary German rather than those that we know to hate, like Hitler, like Goebbels, like Goring, like Himmler, like all of those. And I feel like it is a film that stands completely on its own. I feel like it is one that you can watch, you can enjoy, and you don't need to have read the book. I would strongly recommend reading the book. It is a beautiful book. But as the film goes, it is a 9 out of 10. It is a fantastically done film. Now, my final rating is, of course, how close the film struck to the original narrative, The Book Thief. Now, as I've mentioned earlier, there are many differences to the plot that made it to the screen. So despite it being very close with characters, spot on with setting, the plot is what's pulling it down, and it pulls it down to a 6 out of 10 for me. Now, that is my own opinion. It's always been my own opinion. If you disagree, if you do agree, if you would like to read the book, go ahead. Just leave anything below in the comments. If there's any book or film adaptations you want me to do leave below in the comments. Don't forget to click subscribe as well so you can be alerted whenever a new video is out. And so join me next week, and this will be my contented narrative around Coraline. Fantastic film, fantastic book, but that's spoiling things. So just remember to always keep it contento.